energy when one is out there. It's not only nature, it's just an energy of the past and history of it. You're far away from civilization and yet very close.
I grew up looking out at Rose Island and the Rose Island Lighthouse for my whole childhood.
Rose Island is located in the middle of the East Passage of Lower Narragansett Bay, approximately 1 mile west of Newport, Rhode Island. The island is roughly 18 acres in size and was first used by the Narragansett Indians for fishing and shell fishing in the summer months. The Narragansetts named the island Connoconnoquet, which translates as the place of the long point, because at low tide there is an exposed spit of land jutting out from the northern edge of the island. Its history as a military fortification begins with the British, who built a battery on the island during the Revolutionary War when they occupied Newport before August 1778. Subsequently, it was used by the American forces during the Battle of Rhode Island, and still later it was utilized by the French forces under Rochambeau in 1780. After the establishment of the United States military, the fort became part of the first system coastal fortification in 1798 and named Fort Hamilton after Alexander Hamilton. In the 19th century, Fort Hamilton was used as a quarantine station for the port of Newport during a cholera outbreak, and later that century the island became part of the U.S. Naval Torpedo Station. During World Wars I and II, the fort was used for munitions storage by the U.S. Navy, who were developing and manufacturing torpedoes on nearby Goat Island.
It was very different when I was young. The harbor was filled with destroyers and battleships and a Navy coming and going.
My sister remembers sailing out there in our catboat and one day getting becalmed because there was no wind and it was very foggy, and she was quite terrified because there are a lot of rocks. She knew she was around Rose Island somewhere. What they did finally out of desperation was to tie the boat onto the remains of the old dock at Rose Island. It was before the new pier had been made. And they just sat in the boat and waited, and they were freezing and wet. And somebody came down from the island and invited them to come onto the island and up to the lighthouse, to the house. He was an older gentleman, and he gave them blankets to get warm and dry. Come and get warm by the fire. She said we were terrified to come on the island because the sign said, "Trespassers will be shot." And he said, "Oh, don't worry about that." And he called the Coast Guard, or probably radioed the Coast Guard, who came and towed them back to the mooring.
The lighthouse itself was designed by award-winning Vermont architect Albert Dow and was first lit in 1870 as a navigational aid to ships, mostly from the Fall River line, which ran passenger ferries from New York City to Quonset Point, Providence, and Fall River, Massachusetts. The lighthouse first beamed its fixed red light over Narragansett Bay on January 20th, 1870. In August of 1885, following the grounding of several vessels on the rocks and shoals around the island, including the steamer Plymouth, bound to New York City from Fall River, a wooden A-frame structure was built to hold a fog bell. In 1912, the foghorn building was added, and an L was added to the main lighthouse building, making it a two-family home. The keeper's family lived on the first floor and the assistant keeper's family on the second floor. Keepers served under the U.S. Lighthouse Service until the 1940s, when the U.S. Coast Guard took over. The Newport Pell Bridge was completed in 1969, rendering the lighthouse obsolete after 100 years of service. Subsequently, the building was abandoned and over time became vandalized. In 1984, the government declared it surplus and was willing to give it to any local government agency that would accept it, restore it, and open it to the public. However, because of the deplorable condition of the building and the large expense of repairing it, the city of Newport initially refused to take it on. At this juncture, the Rose Island Lighthouse Foundation was formed from 11 separate civic organizations who banded together to form the new group under the leadership of retired Navy Captain Curtis W. Bunting. Each organization appointed a representative to serve on the first board. The foundation convinced the city of Newport to accept the property and pledge to restore, renovate, maintain, and operate the lighthouse at no cost to the taxpayers. It raised $400,000 of the projected $1.2 million cost for the restoration, and the balance was achieved through donated labor, supplies, and equipment. The island is made up of 2 lots. The lighthouse occupies 1.5 acres, and this is the portion that was obtained by the foundation and the city. The other portion of the island is approximately 16 acres, was privately owned and slated for development into a condominium complex and a 200-slip marina.
It just would have changed the island so drastically that that's what galvanized everybody into action to save the island from development.
By 1999, the foundation managed to purchase the remainder of the island for $629,750. Funds were raised with help from a state open space grant and from 2 local charitable trusts. For its contribution to the purchase, the State Department of Environmental Management, DEM, received a perpetual conservation easement on the deed that protects the sensitive bird nesting habitat as well as historic fort structures. The foundation lobbied for and received historic recognition for the lighthouse in 1987 and for the fort in 2001. Both are recognized by the National Register of Historic Places. The light was relit by the foundation in 1992 after many years of effort and is now a private aid to navigation.
Charlotte had a gathering at the New York Yacht Club that night, and at 7 o'clock, as soon as it got dark, that was the great moment. We all went outside and watched the light come on, and it was such a magical moment. Everybody just cheered and wept. It was just, we had come a very long way.
From May to mid-October, school children visit the island on field trips. Students see how the past can provide answers for the future at the Rose Island Lighthouse, a historic living museum and environmental education center. They receive a tour of the Lighthouse Museum, first floor living quarters, and the renewable, sustainable utilities in the basement. Rainwater cistern, heating system, and lighting from compact fluorescent bulbs that were installed in the 1990s. Here, the keeper's practical, resourceful way of life becomes a reality for students through hands-on activities. This allows them to see firsthand what it was like to live at the turn of the 20th century without running water and electricity. The memory of this day stays with them for the rest of their lives. Today, the bulk of the island consists of irreplaceable nesting habitat for American oyster catchers, glossy ibis, great and snowy egrets, little blue herons, black-crowned night herons, and many species of duck, as well as Canada geese and, of course, seagulls.
It's not often you get to see baby gulls in their nest and baby mallards.
The island is an ideal nesting habitat as there are no threats from predators on the island such as foxes, dogs, etc. And the island is tick-free as there are no mammals here either. The nesting habitat is off limits for the public from March 1st to August 15th each year. The buildings on the island are let out to the public on a nightly, or weekly basis by the foundation.
99.9% of our guests are just fun, cool people. We get a lot of folks that make friends out here and end up coming back like the next year on the same night with these new friends.
The main lighthouse building has 2 separate apartments. The downstairs has been restored with first-hand input from past keepers' families to the 1912 to 1924 period, complete with pump organ, a pitcher pump at the pantry, and a wood coal burning stove. There are also many illustrations and photographs from its long history displayed on the walls. This area accommodates up to 4 adults in 2 bedrooms and is open to the public to tour from Memorial Day through Labor Day. The upstairs is known as the keeper's quarters and can also accommodate up to 4 adults. There is electricity, heat and hot water available in this unique space. Bookings and prices can be accessed through the Rose Island Lighthouse Foundation website, www.roseisland.org. The Foghorn Room is in a separate building from the main building that sits adjacent to the main building on the west side and also affords panoramic views of the bay. This charming room accommodates 2 adults and is available to rent in the summer only. The barracks room is also a seasonal room that accommodates 2 adults and 2 children. It is located in a building on the other side of the lighthouse complex. This room is one of 9 that would have housed soldiers stationed at what was to be Fort Hamilton, circa 1798. There are other rooms in the barracks that can be rented for private functions. There are no water or electricity links to the mainland, so electricity is supplied by solar panels and a diesel generator. Water for toilets is provided by runoff rainwater that is collected in several cisterns on the island. Drinking water is supplied by large bottle containers in the living quarters. There is 1 shower in the keeper's quarters and a second outside shower which uses solar shower bags for visitors. The Jamestown-Newport ferry brings visitors to the island in the summer months for those wishing a short day trip visit. Guides are on hand to greet them and provide them with information about the lighthouse, the barracks, and the remains of Fort Hamilton.
When you come to stay out, you're not just staying in a hotel, you're kind of experiencing Rose Island and the history, the fact that it was more than just a lighthouse too, it was a fort and the Revolution and both World Wars.
It's wonderful. We look out every night and make sure the light is going. I feel confident now that Rose Island is in good hands.
I've since taken my children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren out to spend the night at Rose Island. It's just so meaningful to us to be able to climb all over that island after remembering looking at it as something that was kind of a scary place. I'm so happy to have Rose Island in my backyard.